Okay, so let's get back to, let me get back to my PowerPoints here.
Okay.
Um,
Previously on DISCAS
share.
Demystified.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we left off here at the web app.
Okay.
And oh, we didn't do the web app. That's right. We didn't go through the web app.
No,
We're
we
going to
did
go
not.
through
No, we did not.
that. Okay, so let us go through the web app a bit here.
Okie dokie. Sounds good.
So to get to the web app, you just type Avixa DISCAS calculator.
Okay.
And this is the easiest way to get to it. You can go through the page and everything, but it's like, 15 clicks as opposed to typing in a Avixa DISCAS calculator and going right to it.
Are you sure? Oh, yeah, you're sharing. Okay, got it. See it.
So if you go to DISCAS calculator, it's going to want you to enter all the stuff for the cookie.
Okay.
You could do that, or just go down to basic decision making, and it brings it right up.
No,
Yeah,
no,
I know.
Don't play access to the calculator, right?
No, just type in Avixa DISCAS calculator and go to the BDM, just what we saw.
Okay.
So it'll bring this up, and the first time you do it, it may ask you to take a cookie.
Got it.
So, but I know Avixa wants you to log in and get your demographic information, who's using the calculator, et cetera, et cetera. If you do that every single time, it's not, I mean, it's, you do it one time, great, you're using the calculator, awesome. If you do it a bunch of times, it kind of, it's annoying, and B, it like screws up our metrics. Okay, so the calculator, step one, you want to determine your standard eye level. So this is, if you're doing a sitting, if you're doing a standing, whatever it is, you put in the eye level. And units stay consistent throughout the entire calculator. Okay. So if you are using inches for your screen size, or if you're using millimeters or meters or feet, whatever it is. So for your standard eye level, if you're doing sitting, you would do like 48 inches or 4 feet, depending on how you want to do it. I like using inches and millimeters because that's, when we start specking furthest viewer and stuff, it's easy enough to translate into feet and meters, et cetera, et cetera.
Right. It's hard to think about display sizes in feet than distance in inches.
Especially if it's like 4.6 feet. Okay, I know 4.5 feet is 4 feet 6 inches.
Well,
what's really, so is it 4 feet 6 1/8? So I just keep it inches. So 48 inches. I'll type here in my, I'll type up here in my thing, 48. And then aspect.
You know what I did in just kind of on that subject in the app I mentioned in our first section. My son was actually into he helped me do the development of it, and I made him create 2 fields for room height, width, and depth. How people input that. I made him create 2 fields for each, feet and inches, and I made him do the calculations in the background because of that very reason, because it's such a pain just to do the math.
Do you have feet and inches, and there's nowhere that correlates to metric?
We haven't created a place in the settings where you can flip to metric yet, but that's in the plans. Yep.
Okay, cool. So next box, aspect ratio. If you're doing, if you're doing 4:3, it's a 1.33. It's just a simple number, something
aspect ratio
something.
Multiplier. Yeah.
So let's do 16 by 9, 1.78. Okay. So to read this,
are you using the app? Because I still see the slide. Are you sharing the calculator?
Well, I moved in here. Let me do new share. I moved let me do my desktop instead. How's that?
Yeah, that way you can move.
Yeah, I was actually, so I'm on my Mac today, which I much prefer. And when I swipe between screens, it still stays on the screen.
Fun stuff.
So I selected my PowerPoint and it stayed on my PowerPoint. When I swipe to the desktop,
got it.
I'll stick on my desktop.
Makes sense.
So 48 inches for my eye level right here. And then aspect ratio expressed as a something dot something something 1.78 for my.
What's the standard for if your audience, say you were trying to design for like a lobby display, and so your audience was standing? What's the eye height there for
I
standing?
usually use 65 feet.
Okay.
So, if somebody's 5'6" or 5'8", that plays around. If you're doing, and you really have to again look at your client. If it's a locker room for the NBA, eye height's a little bit different.
You want to push it up a bit.
Yeah, sitting eye height is like 5'6".
Right.
So whatever the eye height is, just and keep the units consistent. Aspect ratio. So to use this calendar, we want to go top down.
Okay.
So to find the furthest viewer, I'm looking for my furthest viewer. That means I know my image height. Say we have a 60-inch image height.
Okay.
My element height, minimum element height. That means I've gone with, I've sat down with my client. We looked at their content and said, this is what your content is. Not, we haven't changed anything yet. This is what it is. So we just look at it and say it's a 3%. So I do that. And then distance from the floor to the bottom of the image, say it's standard eye height to the bottom of the image, 48 inches. So now, if you notice, it filled in the green boxes for me. So for a 60-inch image height at 3%, my furthest viewer is 360 inches, or 30 feet.
Right.
Closest viewer, 103.9 inches, and that is going to give us our 30-degree max to the top of the screen.
Okay, so you measure to the top of the screen. I've always thought it was the average, like to the middle of the screen.
No, it's 15 degrees to the middle, 30 degrees to the top.
15 to the middle. Okay.
So and you notice, well, if I change this to like say 52, that changes the bottom numbers, not that 360 to the furthest.
Right.
So if I go back here and change it to 48, so closest viewer is 103.9. That will maintain that 30 degrees.
Right, because you're not changing the size of the image. You're just changing the elevation of it.
Right, up and down.
Yeah, so it changes that angle of view for that closest seating position.
Yes.
Okay.
So the max length of closest viewer plane. What this is, if I went from the center of the display and went out to 103.9 inches, 104 inches, I would have 253.2 inches viewing plane. That means, let's see, 126.6 this way and 126.6 this way.
Oh, okay. So about 10 feet in each direction.
Yeah. So I get that, whatever that max length of closest viewer plane is, and I would divide it into two, and that's left and right. So
that's cool.
That far out at 103 inches, we'll be able to go that far out, and that's going to give us that 60 degrees from the if I took the screen where the screen was, the sides of the screen, so this side of the screen going out, if I took from that corner and went 60 degrees out, that's going to be the closest viewer plane.
Got it. So if we're talking about a room in this scenario, say our room, we've got 10 feet in each direction. So that works if our front wall is around 20 feet, or our room width is around 20 feet. If the room gets much wider than 20 feet, we have to start thinking about a second display?
Well, not necessarily a second display, because are people going to be in that say the room's 28 feet, are people going to be in the last 4 feet of that viewing area?
Sure.
And remember, this is 60 degrees off. I'm not going to be 103 inches all the way out. It's only 103 inches to 20 feet, and then it angles off. So you can have further back, you can have it wider, because it's going to be this big angle,
Right.
If the room's 20 feet
width, but if it's the same depth, but you're now dealing with a room that's, say, 30 feet wide, start thinking about, or at 40 feet wide, how do you use this max length CV plane calculation to kind of help you determine when to start thinking about that second display?
So I'd have to sit down, put the display down, CAD it out, look at where the furniture is going to be, because remember, up front there's always going to be room for a presenter, maybe a whiteboard if they're doing drawing stuff.
Sure.
So I'd want to put everything out on a CAD. I actually do this with Lego.
Nice.
Seriously, I CAD out a room, and I have a setting on my CAD saved for the scale of Lego people. And I have in my office, I don't know if you saw it yesterday, the shelves behind me, one
Okay.
full shelving unit was completely full of just Legos. And one of those
Oh,
buckets,
nice.
I had 250 Lego people.
Oh my gosh.
So I can put them in different seating arrangements and stuff, and I can look
Yeah.
and see and do predictive behaviors of how the people are going to react in the room based on how the Legos fit.
Okay.
So I would do this on a CAD. I might CAD it out, put Legos in different seating configurations. If they wanted to do pods, I'd build a pod. And it's nice to just I just like the plan view of the room, and I print it out on this acetate whiteboard so I can draw on it.
Have you taken some pictures of different layouts you've done with
Yeah.
Legos? I'd love
Oh,
to
yeah.
see that.
They're on Twitter, on Facebook, all over the place. I
Oh
post
yeah.
them
Okay.
all the time. I
Okay.
usually do them in design class. I
That's
teach
fun.
guys how to do them in design class.
Okay.
Uh,
Okay.
but yeah, so that closest viewer with that angle, am I going to have to need to put seats outside of that viewing area
Mm-hmm.
or pods? Sometimes this affects, like if you have pods.
Yeah.
Um, are the pods going to be outside the viewing area? Do we need to move them back just a little bit? So that just layout of the closest viewer, the length of the closest viewer helps out just for your space planning.
Got it.
So you could use that however you wish. If the room is very, very wide and you say, hey, you know what, I'm losing a lot of real estate, I could have people here
Yeah.
and get more people in the room, then it might be time for a secondary display. If that's not going to be a big deal in the room, and that's it, just enough room on each side for like a whiteboard for the presenter and a lectern podium area. It might be good where it's at 30 feet, like a 30 feet. If you had a 60-inch tall screen with a 30-foot furthest viewer, if you had a 30-foot wide room, like the room was square, that's going to be acoustically also, it's going to be really kind of weird if you have a completely square room. You want to have more, rooms are usually designed rectangular.
For reflections, it's going to be weird.
So 360 inches, you'd probably have a 20-foot wide room. So it'd probably work out pretty good. If it was 360 inches deep and 60 feet wide, like they opened up a wall in a ballroom, then if it was double, I'd definitely put another display, and it would work out pretty good.
Okay. Okay.
So we're looking at our length of CV plane, then the image width, the actual width of the image, because it's aspect ratios. It's just telling you it's 106.8 inches.
Right.
Diagonals 122. Your viewing ratio is what's going to be that image height to furthest viewer ratio. So it's a 1 to 6 ratio. So this is kind of how 468 sometimes fits, because if I went down to 2%, that means my stuff's smaller, right?
Yeah.
That means I have to get closer. So if I go down to 2%.
2% element height, you mean?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. If I went down, say my client had a 2% element height, well, that's only 4 times the image height. That would be the 4 in 468. I have to get closer, just like in 468 when we had to do inspection.
Yeah, right.
So if my element height was 2%, that's a viewing ratio of 4 times. My furthest viewer would only be 240 with the same image height.
Yeah, yeah. So if 10 point at 1080p is about 1.3 to 1.5% element height, 2% at the same resolution would probably be, at least 16 point, I'm thinking.
Again, it's going to depend on the font. I mean, if you're looking at 2%, it's going to be between 16 and 18, depending on the font. If you get into Word, it's funny. If you get into Word and then type a few characters and then switch fonts at the same point and type something else, you're going to notice E's are different size, C's are different size. So it depends on the typography and how they're doing points to pitch. That's why we always want to measure the actual element. That's why we don't care if it's font. We don't care about points. We don't get out of the habit of doing the resolution to point math. That's because it's going to skew your stuff. Do the actual
for me to break.
Yeah,
learning how to use the DISCAS formula.
I know, man. We used to teach that typography in class, and I was in such a routine of, all right, we're going to look at pixels and how many pixels high, and if I got 10.8 pixels, that's going to be roughly a 7-point font, so I know a 7-point font's going to be 10%, and I could do this, and like I had to break that routine big time.
Was it the optometrist you brought in to help develop the DISCAS standard that were mostly responsible for breaking that?
No. The optometrist said it has to be this big to be able to see it. And then the typographists, the guys who were into typography, said, yeah, don't do points, because points are going to be different. It's going to be
typographist.
Yeah, it's going to be different for every, like, if you're doing calligraphy, if you're doing Times New Roman, if you're doing Arial or Calibri or Wingdings, like whatever font, it's going to be different.
Mm-hmm.
There's a rule of thumb, the 1.3 to 1.5, but like if you want to get really accurate per standard, put a ruler or some kind of measuring stick up to that thing and get the overall. Like if my screen's 10 inches and that thing's a ½ inch, that's 5%.
Right.
So they said, just take all the points, the font, the pitch out of it, and do actual measurements.
Okay.
So so if I have a 2% of overall height, element height, it gives me that 4 times the viewing ratio. 3% gives me 6 times. 4%, of course, gives me 8 times. But now we have things like 5 times. 2.5% is 5 times. So we can get a little bit more granular in our measurements.
Okay.
So you want to go top to bottom of that column. You don't want to read across. You want to read top to bottom.
Okay.
So to find my furthest viewer, the one that's in green, I got my image height. I know my percent element height. It's going to give me my furthest viewer. And even if I don't put distance to the bottom of the floor, like if I took that out, when you first start, it won't fill in any stuff. It won't fill in anything. So it'll be all zeros like these. So I put in the 48, and it gives me the right measurements. So that's to find my furthest viewer.
Got it.
If I want to find my image height, say I have a room and I know my furthest viewer, and I look at my client's content and I measure it on their screen, and I know the content percent element height, and I can say, okay, let's see how big the standard recommends the display. So I go to element height, say it's a 4%. I know my furthest viewer is, say, well, let me get my calculator here because I got to do this in inches. My furthest viewer is 25 feet. So 300 inches. And then distance to the floor, say there's a camera right at 48 and we want that camera at eye level. So we're going to put our display a little bit higher than the camera, so to 8 inches. So we're going to go 56. So then it says your image height needs to be a minimum of 37.5 inches to see at 25 feet with 56 inches to the bottom of the image. Your closest viewer can be at 78 feet.
Okay.
Your max CV plane is 206. Your image width is 66, and your diagonal is a 67. So here, or 76. Here, you could get away with a 75. You know, we're talking tiny at this time.
Yeah.
And because my viewing ratio and my elements of 4%, my viewing ratio is a 1 to 8.
Yep.
So this 4% now means I can get a 75-inch diagonal. If I kick this down to a 3%, well, now my numbers have changed. I need a 102-inch diagonal.
Right.
So this is
in from flat panel territory to projector screen. Yeah.
So this is where I can work with my client and say, okay, they might not have room for a 102-inch diagonal. I mean, you're talking the image height of 50 inches. Say they have an 8-foot ceiling, a low ceiling, and only have room for a 48.
Yep.
Okay, let's talk about this. Let's maybe instead of 3%, we make our element 3.5%, which is a 7 times the viewing ratio.
Right, and we actually do this in my AV system designer app, because I know a lot of times clients will maybe more aspirational clients will simply want to know, well, how big of a display can I fit in this room?
Right.
And I just take the physical height of the ceiling the users put in the app, and just give them that. And sometimes the recommended size is higher than what'll fit in the room.
Right,
But at
right,
least
right.
you know that.
So
Yeah.
this way we could say, all right, we can't get that big a display in your room, but if we make the display smaller and kick up our percent element, instead of
Right.
making your PowerPoints at a 16-point font, make them
Right.
at a 20-point font.
You
Because
don't have just
PowerPoint,
one lever. You've got a couple different levers to pull on.
yeah. This is where this really gets to be a good tool for our clients.
Mm-hmm.
And you could sit down with them and say, okay, let's go through this calculator and talk about this.
Yeah.
And at this point, it's not your opinion, or it's not like you trying to sell them something. It's showing them their requirements and what we could do with their requirements.
Right.
So now I get an 87 diagonal in this room, which is still flat panel area.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I put a 90 in there, boom, we're good.
Yep.
And they just reduce or increase their element by a point and a half, and we're gold.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's to find the minimum image height. We have the furthest viewer, and we know what that's going to be. We have the element, and we show them, okay, this is your element. We're going to need a big display. Let's kick up the element because we physically don't have room above, to the ceiling for this. Let's kick the element.
Yeah.
And we can show them what a 3.5 element is and say, hey, this is how easy it is.
Mm-hmm.
Send out a memo. When you're making your PowerPoints, you can go no lower than a 20-point font for the body.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Done.
Yeah.
And if they say, well, I've got a paragraph to put on my PowerPoint, I need to bump it down to 11.
Mm-hmm.
Well, number one, you're using PowerPoint wrong. Number two, no, we said we need a 20, not an 11. So if you need to make more slides to get your point across, cool. What I would recommend is a class on PowerPoint and like 3 to 4 bullet points and not a paragraph. If you have to read a PowerPoint to people, just send an email and forget the meeting.
Yeah, I was trying to look around my desk. I don't know if I still have it, but Draper, I think it is.
Oh, yeah. Great reference.
A pretty cool reference kind of fold out of different characters and character sizes, right?
Yeah.
And at what distance you should look for them based on the resolution.
Yeah. Do you have the AV Buddy app?
I do.
Okay, on AV Buddy, if you go to the AV Buddy calculators, and at the very bottom of it, it has on the calculators section or AV tools, it has test patterns.
Yes.
In the test patterns, there are different screens with letters that say AV Buddy, AV Buddy, AV Buddy, AV Buddy.
Mm-hmm.
They are different element heights.
Okay.
So one has like a 10%, one has a 5%, one has a 3%. One has a 2%. And you can put this up there and tell your client, okay, I want you to read from the top to the bottom and tell me when your eyes start to hurt. And if it's, I've done this in class, usually if I'll put up like a 1% and put people too far back, they get halfway through the screen and they're like, no, And then I put up a 3%, which is what they should be reading, and they're like, oh yeah, all day long. I could do I could do this all day. I don't have to squint or scan that line. I can look at the overall picture and get what they're saying, which is the point. So good tool to use. Chris is really the maker of AV Buddy. Chris is really good. He's a CTS and he's really good at updating the app to work with the standards, the different standards. So finding the minimum image height, tagging the client, I input these numbers, the ones I know. I can change around some variables and get an image height. To find the element height, say your client says, okay, I have a 10-foot ceiling. I want the bottom of my image to be at eye level height, so I have 6 feet to work with, 72 inches. So okay, let's enter that. I have a 72-inch image height. My furthest viewer is 33 feet. So we're looking at 336 inches. And the distance from the floor, what we said, is 48. So I can get away with a 2.3% element height. So this is finding the minimum element height. So now they can go back and design their content. So that's how you use these 3 different calculators.
Okay.
And all the math that it talks about in the appendix of the standard, this takes all that into effect. This calculator is actually made by Dick Tolberg, and he's one of the guys that was on the standards committee.
Oh,
so
cool.
This is all like, it gives you everything you need. It's really nice because you can sit down with your client and go, hey, let's take a look at these.
Yeah.
And you can explain to the client. And it truthfully, I don't know how many times I've gone out to talk to a client and the first thing they say is, we need a display this big. And I say, whoa, hold on a second. I want to make sure you're spending your money effectively. Before you say you need a 72-inch tall display, let's take a look at your furthest viewer and content.
Yeah.
And we take a look at the furthest viewer, and it's like 20 feet. And then we take a look at their content, and they have a 4% minimum element height. So 20 feet would be 240 inches with a 4%. At 48, and they're like, we need a 72-inch tall display. And I'm like, really? You only need a 30-inch tall display. Like, you can effectively see this far with a smaller display. So if you want a big display just because you want to spend money and you want a big display, totally cool. Everybody in the next room will be able to see it. But if we're looking for some place that we might need to value engineer stuff, this would be a good place to do it because your content is so big.
Yeah, what kind of markets or what type of customers do you have you visited, or have you heard other people visiting where the percent element height is higher than 2, let's say?
A lot.
Okay.
So the minimum, well, we usually tell people to start with on their content is 3%, and I've noticed between 3 and 3.5% is what people usually end up with on a PowerPoint. On a Word doc, it's a little bit smaller.
Yeah.
It's usually 2.5 to 3, but if you blow up a Word doc full screen at its native, it's pretty good size.
Okay.
And I'm talking like the word starts here and ends here, the sentence, and your margins are outside, or maybe your margins are just a little bit inside. The text is pretty good. So we're looking at my screen right now, and you can see I have a lot of space on the sides because I have my resolution stupid high. Let's boost this up to, okay, so now I have a little bit of space on each side. Not too much, but I'm still fitting this in pretty good.
Yeah.
This E right here would be, I'm looking at it, let me get a quick measurement. So I'm looking at about 1.5, 1.75% on that E. That's still a little small for a PowerPoint. This E right here. Even a Word doc, that might be a little bit small. So for a PowerPoint, these are more of what we're looking at for the screen size. Can you see my PowerPoint?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, this letter right here, oops, let me go back. Oh, there's an E here. This letter right here is about a 3% element height. That's how we design ours.
Again, you're measuring element height based on lowercase characters.
Yes, a lowercase e, a lowercase c.
It doesn't drop below or above the line.
Yes.
That we learned in elementary school. Okay, got it.
It's not the lowercase h that goes up here. Like if you could see the H and the E, the crest of the H and the top of the E is about the same height. The T where it's crossed and the R, these lowercase letters, not the height of the T or the H or the lower of the G. It's just the in between the dotted line and the bottom line.
Right. Color within the lines, kids.
Yeah, play within the lines. So looking at these, for this right here, I have up for this web page, I have up about a 1.5, and looking at this 1.5, I'm sitting not too far from it, maybe 2 times my image height. That's perfect, 1.5%.
Yeah, yeah. Cool. Right on. Well, this is super helpful.
Yeah, so this is how you use this calculator. Now there's another one, the ADM, the Advanced Decision Making Calculator. And this is the one that gets more stringent, but there's less variables. Because remember, we're not worried about closest viewer, because it's pixel on pixel, so we can get right up in its business.
Right, right.
So same thing, to find the furthest viewer, I have image height and the resolution. Now check this out. This might take a minute to get your head wrapped around. Say I have an image height of 40. Now, this again is for medical imaging CAD drawings. This is not a big projected image. Usually, if I'm doing pixel on pixel, I'm at like a huddle space with like a, you know, a 42-inch diagonal or a 50-inch diagonal. So a 40-inch diagonal is huge. Let's make it, let's go 26. So that would be like a 50-inch diagonal.
Okay.
For our huddle space, a bunch of doctors getting around one table, and they're looking at medical imaging for an operation that they're gonna do. So my vertical image resolution, say it's 1080. So my furthest viewer is 82.77 inches. So that's, how many feet is that? 7 feet.
7. Yep.
Just almost 7 feet. So if you think about a huddle space, that's about right.
Yeah. Yeah. There's not going to be much deeper than that.
Right. My viewing ratio is 3.18 times the size of the screen. Now, say I need a bigger furthest viewer. What I need to do is actually lower my resolution. Now I get 10 feet.
Okay.
Okay. So what people are having a hard time grasping is, and I was teaching this in a class to a bunch of engineering students in Sweden, and they're like, wait, and they actually use the term shitty. They said, if I need to see better, I make a shittier resolution. I said, no, don't think about it that way. You have an image height of 26 inches. You're cramming 1080 pixels top to bottom in there. If I crammed less pixels, my pixels are bigger. That means that pixel on pixel comparison, the pixels are just bigger pixel on pixel, so I can go back further. I won't be able to see as much real estate, right?
Mm-hmm.
1920 by 1080 versus 1280 by 720. I won't be able to see as much of the picture. I'll be zoomed in more on the picture.
Right.
And they're like, no, I could do it in 4K and I could see a way sharper image. I said, yeah, but your pixels are tiny. Remember, don't think of the overall image. Think of the size of the pixel.
Mm-hmm.
And comparing one pixel to another. So at 4K, those pixels are tiny, so we have to get much closer because of our acuity.
Right.
At 720, the pixels are bigger, so we can get further back.
Mm-hmm.
So once you actually grasp the concept of, okay, 4K, yes, I'm gonna see more real estate. It's gonna be a sharp picture because I have more pixels to break up that image, right?
Yep.
And instead of one pixel that's all black, I can get one that same size with 16 pixels, and some are black, some are gray. It makes a sharper image. But comparing that gray pixel to the black pixel, they're really tiny.
Yeah.
With 720, a gray pixel and a black pixel are really big, so that pixel on pixel comparison is easier. But I don't get as much of the overall image.
Right. And one thing to we think about as designers is the experience when someone plugs their laptop in to one of these systems. Is the system going to force a change in their laptop resolution, mess up the location of all their icons on their desktop, and just generally make it harder to get around? Now, I would think with like scalars in play, like we usually have right before the display, we could set the digital ID, the E did, for 1080p at the plug-in location where the laptop plugs in, and not messing with most people's settings, which are already 1080p, right? And if we need to scale down to 720p for readability or true analytical character height required for analytical decision making, ADM, we could set the scaler right in front of the display at 1080p, and both sides of the equation would be happy.
Yeah. Well, and so if you set the EDID for 1080 and then scaled the display, you might get some weird things going on, because remember, you're trying to cram 1080 lines into 720, so it might make it look like Mario Brothers. If you actually set the EDID and said, we're going to keep the same crispness, we're just not going to have as much real estate.
Yeah.
and did like, hey, I'm going to put my laptop in and do an extended display,
Mm-hmm.
my laptop can still have 1080 and the extended have 720.
True.
Now,
True.
things like PowerPoint is a scaling program. It doesn't matter if you
not
have
really care so much.
no, if you had it on 460 or 4K, it's going to look the same.
Mm-hmm.
Word docs, Excel spreadsheets are not scaling, but again, those are basic decision making.
Sure.
Things like CAD drawings.
Mm-hmm.
So if I have a CAD drawing, right, and say true resolution of this CAD drawing is like 9,000 by 6,000, but it's a vector graphic, so I can zoom in and out, right? If I was to put it at true
pixelate. Yeah.
Right. If I was to put it at true resolution, I would only see a fraction of the overall CAD.
Mm-hmm.
And I would have to move that fraction around, bird's eye view and all that.
Yeah, yeah.
So the same thing would happen if I said, okay, this display is now only 720 because I want to look at pixel on pixel and I want to compare pixels. I'm only going to get a fraction of whatever I'm looking at, but those pixels are going to be big.
Yeah.
And I would just have to move my bird's eye view around.
Got it.
So experimenting with this, like we tried a bunch of different things. Like we did what you were saying, we had a 4K display and put it into a 720 scaler. So now it's trying to dumb down 4,000 lines into 1080, and that's
a lot of squishing.
Yeah, it did not look good at all.
Yeah.
And then we set the displays EDID, or we had an EDID minder basically, and you plugged in, and it gave you the option of 720p or 640 before E. That was it.
Yeah.
So, okay, 720p. I still had 1080 on my laptop, 720p on the other screen, and it was beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
It was a nice big 720p. We were looking at graphics. Granted, we had to move our bird's eye view around, but our pixel on pixel comparison was great.
On a 4K display?
It didn't matter what the display was.
Oh, okay. You tried it on different ones? Okay.
Yeah, because you're looking when you have a 4K display and you're doing a 720 resolution on it, each pixel is like for every 720 pixel, it's going to take up 36 4K pixels.
Yeah.
So these things are all going to be the same. Well, I mean, the 4K pixels are that big. We need to see that big.
Right. Right.
So if I said you are now 720, there's going to be a bunch of 4K pixels, a bunch of lines that represent one line.
Right.
So when this is, I was doing some consulting and I had a client say, well, we want a 4K projector. And I said, why? And they said, we want our Excel spreadsheets to look really good. And I was like, let's talk about DISCAS. And so when in the end, we ended up doing 1080 projectors, and they had they had 4 different inputs on the wall. One input, it said, I actually labeled it Excel input, and that EDID was set for 720. They are giddy because every time they plug into that input, their Excels look great. Everyone can read the numbers. They don't get as many cells. Right. But they can read the numbers.
Yeah.
And someone tried to plug into one of the other ones saying, why is that the Excel only? I'm just going to plug in here. Okay. You know what you're doing. And they plugged in and set their Excel up, and people are like, we can't read the numbers in the back. Can you plug into the one that says Excel? And he's like, fine. So he plugged it in, did the display flashy thingy, brought it up, and now the numbers are bigger, and they're like, thank you. And the guy's like, oh, holy crap. Well, I can't see all my cells now, but the ones you can see, you can see.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it really does have an effect on the experience, on the overall experience. And when they want to do PowerPoint or watch a movie, they can plug into the 1080s. It's cool. They did not need 4K in that room. There was no reason for it.
Did just out of curiosity, did the structure of the room they put their display in limit them from going bigger on the display?
Yeah, they had
going down in resolution from say 1080 to 720.
They had a ceiling that was like 8'6". It was a low ceiling. They had a big drop ceiling. And I actually said, if you want to go bigger on the display, we could take out the first 3 rows of drop tiles and kick the ceiling up. I mean, we have 4 feet from drop ceiling to hard deck, so we can kick it up 2 more feet. And I've done that before. We did that in the classroom at Avixa. We popped the ceiling up. Yeah. And so we got a bigger display, yada, yada, yada. We did it on CAD. We did it so the furthest viewer could still see the top of the screen in our sightline study.
Mm-hmm.
And so as long as you do math and do everything, you can pop parts of the screen up if there's no ducts or sprinkler pipes or anything like that. And I've suggested that many times. Believe it or not, it's not very expensive.
Oh yeah, it's probably only like the first couple rows of tiles, like you said.
Yeah. And then they put a 4K display in there. They can get a larger display, sure. And 4K really, like 4K is meant for movies. It's not meant for Word docs. It's really not. Everybody thinks the hotness of 4K is cool because everybody's buying them for their house. Well, now that they're starting to put out 4K content, totally cool. I just recently bought one because I got a 4K Apple TV. I have 4K Netflix. It looks beautiful. But cable TV and like standard Netflix and Excel spreadsheets and PowerPoints, there's no reason for a 4K. Get a bigger 1080. Get a 90-inch 1080. There's no reason. The resolution's not there. Now, if you have 4K Netflix, if you have medical imaging that you're going to be looking at a Mac that has a 4K output, and you need a big display so you can see those pixels further back, 100%. But if you're buying 4K just to buy 4K, like, sure, knock yourself out. You're not. I mean, it's like buying a Ferrari to drive on a residential neighborhood.
Right.
You know, I can do 25 miles an hour in this $300,000. In the suburbs in a $300,000 car, or I could buy a Chevy for $30,000 and do the same 25 miles an hour.
Right, and get over the speed bumps.
Yeah.
And into my driveway.
Yeah, and nobody's going to steal it.
Yeah.
So if you want to spend the money to spend the money, great. As a consultant, I work for the client and I keep their best interests at hand. So I don't want them to spend money unnecessarily. And, you know, I mean, you're a consultant. You know, you want the best for your client. You want the best solution for them. We could put that money somewhere else.
Sure.
So,
especially when you're talking about restacking a full floor or two for them, or, you know, moving them into a expanding into a brand new building or something like that, where the incremental costs now, you know, multiply and become big cost differences.
Oh yeah. I was doing consulting for a small private school, and when we first started talking about it, I got the referral from an AV company. A friend of mine was a sales guy, and a small private school called and said, hey, we need a classroom model. Suggested something, and they came back and said 20 grand. They had hard margins. It was a big company, and they said 20 grand per classroom, which isn't a lot, but the school said, we can't afford that. So he said, call this guy, he'll hook you. So I got them the room. If they bought the equipment with educational discount, and I got some guys that I knew did good work to do it on the side, we could do $1,000 a room labor. Ended up costing like $7,500 a room. And she said, yeah, that's great because I have 20 rooms to do.
Gosh.
So scale really does play into effect.
Right.
20 versus 20,000 vice 20 versus 7,500 is huge.
That's a $20,000 labor project.
Yeah, just labor. And I mean, the company had a hard margin on parts of, you know, it's 30 points on parts, and they had like their labor rate was, it was a good labor rate. It's like $1.20, $1.30 an hour. They paid their techs well, and they had, you know, it was a good big company with good bonus programs, and they have to charge a certain amount for labor for the company. If I'm doing it with dudes on the side, I could
no infrastructure to pay for.
And I could pay the guys, you know, $250 a day. These guys were good. They could knock out 3 rooms a day. And you know, everybody's wetting their beak on that. The guys are like, this is easy work. It was just hanging bangs.
Oh yeah.
And they could do that all day long. We made a day out of it. We were playing music and eating fried chicken while we're doing this stuff, you know. And I bought the fried chicken.
Of course.
And we had a good old time on the weekends, and they made a little bit of jingle in their pockets. I made a little bit of jingle in mine. The client was happy. And I actually ended up having a relationship with that client, doing all their AV for the next 10 years.
Oh, wow.
And it was always very easy. I used the same dudes. Afterward, we'd go out and have beers. You know, we worked 8 or 10 hours. They made, you know, if it was a good day where we knocked out like 5 rooms, I paid them like $500. And the guys are fast. They did it well. It was easy work. So that scale really comes into play. And when you're
Sure.
talking about the difference between a 90 inch or 121 inch vice an 80 inch or a 70 inch
Yeah.
in so many rooms, or
Right.
a 4K projector vice a 1080. If the 1080
Yeah.
is half the price of a 4K because they're on clearance,
Mm-hmm.
that's a lot of cheddar.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, one last question as we kind of wind down here,
Sure.
Chuck. Your take on designing a room around 16 by 9 versus 16 by 10 when
Sure.
it's in a corporate setting.
So that's going to depend on a lot of things. Number one, what is everybody's computers using? Are they using 16 by
Okay.
9 computers or 16 by 10? Is it a
Kind of
projector?
divided into like a Mac and PC. If you're a Mac centric, you think about 16 by 9?
Yeah.
No.
Another thing is I'm going to take everything into account. What their furthest viewer is, what kind of room it is. If I'm going into a room that I could recommend a 90-inch flat panel or a 90-inch projection screen, I'm going to look at the environment of the room. Is there a lot of windows? Is it going to get blown out if I'm doing a projection screen? Is it going to blow it out? Do I want a flat panel or maybe even a larger flat panel because of the contrast ratio?
So you're looking at a room that has to do projection.
It has like a 160-inch diagonal screen.
Right, right.
So, and it has window treatment. I have dimmable lights.
Yep, you have ambient light control.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's so if you look at the different projectors, 16 by 9 projectors are actually really expensive.
They are.
I would just get a 16 by 10 because 16, here's the thing. If you spec a 16 by 10 projector and show a 16 by 9 image, nobody cares about a half on the top and the bottom blanked out. Nobody cares. But if you don't line up the projector correctly and have letterboxing on the side, everybody flips out. So a 16 by 10 projector with a 16 by 9 image, that's no big deal. As long as the width fits, as long as it's 16, it's good.
No, and then nobody wants to leave unused width.
Yeah.
On their screen. Okay.
Now, especially if I have to go projectors in flat panel, I'm going to go a 16 by 10 projector because flat panels, there's no 16 by 10 flat panels.
Sure.
They're all 16 by 9. So I want to make sure the image will fit on the flat panel because if I have unused space on the flat panel, then people flip out. It doesn't matter where the unused space is, they'll flip out. Yeah. So I would always get a 16 by 10 projector and a 16 by 9 flat panel, and I can fit the 16 by 10 or by 9 into the 16 by 10, no big deal. 16 by 9 projectors are usually twice as much as 16 by 10 projectors.
Right. And you're starting to get into the range of like cinema.
Yeah.
16 by 9 projectors.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm always gonna, I look at the environment. If I'm doing a flat panel, then I'm gonna say, okay, we're gonna go 16 by 9. If I'm doing a projector, doesn't matter. 16 by 9, 16 by 10.
Okay. Cool.
So yeah, I know we're getting close to the end here. So let's click through a couple more.
All right.
Basic formulas to work. Formulas are not unit specific as long as you're consistent with units. Typically 2 to 4% element for basic decision making. 3% is a good starting point. I have some practice problems in here we do in class, and then some slides showing just the different element heights. And these these are kind of it depends. If I'm doing this on a 16 by 10 and it stretches it, it's a little bit different. These are close. This is kind of what it looks like. Not every program scales. Word processing, Word, and notes and stuff like that don't scale. Spreadsheets don't scale. To find the element height, quick down and dirty math. Furthest viewer divided by 200. That's the height of the element. I don't care what size the screen is. That's the height of the element.
Got it.
So if I have a 600-inch furthest viewer, I divide that by 200. I need a 3% element. I don't care if it's a 130-inch diagonal. I don't care if it's a 24-inch diagonal. I need a 3% element.
Got it.
To find furthest viewer, I have 200 times my element height, and that's how far they could see it. It's just, reverse algebra. Oops. To find the element height actual furthest viewer divided by 200. Okay. For ADM, I need, for my image height, it's image resolution times furthest viewer divided by 3438. And 3438 is the constant for ADM and it's, again, all of this math is in the back of the standard. This is the variable for your acuity at pixel on pixel resolution. That's why we take the resolution into consideration on this calculation.
Got it. Got it. Do you would you recommend using this formula when designing like an interactive display where people are walking right up to it as well?
No, again, an interactive display, if you're interacting with the picture, it's a basic decision making. I mean, that's basic decision making is the overall image, and you're using a group of pixels. Pixel on pixel, like if you can touch one pixel on an interactive display, you've got really tiny fingers, or a sharp, very sharp stylus.
Right.
Like you hit little, like I have a toothpick and I'm just gonna boop. So an interactive display, usually you're making big arrows pointing at something, or you're circling something, or you're doing some
Right.
kind of drawing. That's still an overall image, and you're working with groups of pixels.
Got it. Okay.
This is really like, I need to see that cancer cell versus that good cell so we know where to cut. Or
okay.
I'm looking at satellites that are looking at troop movements, and there's a very tiny bush, and I need to see if there's a bad guy in that bush.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So this is where I would get right up in it. And this is 3438, it's just the acuity factor for analytical decision making. Furthest viewer equals, to find furthest viewer, I get the image height divided by the image resolution multiplied by 3438. So image height, say 60 divided by my resolution. So let me do this real quick. 60 divided by, say, 1080 equals 0.055555556. So that times 3438 equals 191 inches. So I would be able to see 191 inches back on a 60-inch tall screen.
Okay. Okay.
So some more practice problems here. Practice. Kind of the same thing. BDM image height. Image height equals the furthest viewer divided by 200 times the element height, and that gives us image height. Furthest viewer image height times percent element height times 200. So say my image height is 100 inches. Percent element height is 3%, 0.03. So that's 3 inches times 200. Furthest viewer would be 600 inches.
Got it. Got it. Okay.
So there's a bunch of different ways to do the math. We go over in our prep class, we go over a lot of them. This is the vertical viewing factor, that how wide we could see at that closest viewer. So to do this, I need a couple things. Viewing factor. The viewing factor is the image height. So say it's a 60-inch tall image, plus the image offset. And what the offset is how high or low it is below our eye height. That's why we enter in the eye height on the calculator.
Oh, okay.
So if my image height, the image height is 60 and I'm at 48, my viewing factor is 60. So at 48 inches, the bottom of the image, and my eye height's 48, there's zero offset. If, say, I had that camera there and the image offset was 8 inches, so it would be image height plus the offset of 8 inches, so my viewing factor would be 68. Then I would take that viewing factor and multiply that by 1.732, and that would give me my closest viewer. And 1.732 is also another constant. And so if we look at the angle of 48 being 0 and 30 degrees to the top of the image, to get a right triangle, what would the inverse be of 30 degrees?
60.
60. So if I took the tangent of 60, it would come out to 1.732.
Got it.
So I use that viewing factor, image height plus offset, times 1.732, the inverse of the tangent, or the inverse of the angle, the tangent of the inverse of the angle, and that's going to give me that 30 degrees no matter how high up it goes. So closest viewer, viewing factor times 1.732, and I get the 30 degrees, and that gives me how far forward or far back my closest viewer will be. And this is all integrated in that calculator.
Cool, cool. So where should people go if they want to, say, take your class and get more of this sort of in-person training about this stuff?
Glad you asked. I will show you. So if you are,
And I got about 3 minutes before we have to wrap up. I had another call coming up, just as an FYI.
no problem. If you go to the AVIXA website, www.avixa.org, and go to events, you could see our upcoming classes, our upcoming events as soon as it loads here. We have all the events coming up. So let's see. The next event coming up you can see is, we have installation day, network AV systems. Well, let's go to the US. Say it's people in the US. I'm going to apply. Operations management, Almo E4, I'll be speaking at that one on March 12th, AVIXA Women's Council. So you could just look for a CTS class coming up, and CTS Prep in Irving, Texas, and click on it, April 23rd. It gives you all the information. DISCAS is taught in all of our classes. CTS Preps, in installation classes, in Design 1 we teach DISCAS. We do every now and then have webinars just on DISCAS, but you could just go to the AVIXA events page. And if anybody, seriously, if anybody has any questions about DISCAS, just like you did, you can contact me on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on Twitter. I reply to all of them. You can contact any of the instructors. We're all on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter. You could send an email to avprofs or education@avixa.org, avprofs@avixa.org. Get on the AVProfs Twitter site. We respond to everybody.
Nice. I didn't know about the AV Profs handle, so that's good. That's cool. Plus, I'm really interested to check out your Twitter page for those Lego reenactments.
Yeah, look at my Facebook page. If you go to Facebook,
Okay.
just type Mad Sound Guy or Chuck Espinoza, and
Okay.
either my logo will pop up or my face, depending on how I'm feeling that day. Put whatever. And my logo looks like Superman, but it says MSG in the middle, Mad Sound Guy.
Okay.
And you can just scroll through. We did Legos in design class in last September, and people loved it. Oh my God, they went nuts over the Legos.
I'm sure. That's great. I got to add that to my desk as a talking point.
Nice.
Hey, why do you have Legos set up? Oh, I do it to reenact a sightline and
I'm telling you. You can do predictive behavior. I do experience design with Legos. I teach a class on a little bit of experience design, and we use Legos for modeling. And people were like, I never knew you could do this. And once you get into the psychology of how people work and actually manipulate people, like Lego people, like, oh my God, I see that happening. And they just freak out. And it's not just, okay, this is nice to happen. I set up a classroom a certain way and then let people behave. And before they did this in the classroom, I made notes and pictures saying, these people are going to do this. So they did it in the classroom, and I put it up on the screen. Look at how you did this. And they're like, holy crap, you predicted our behavior. Yes. With Legos, because you can see it and you can make notes and like, this is a choke point. These guys are bumping elbows. This guy's out of the good viewing area, so he's going to scooch forward. And people were actually like, oh my God, you can actually do this. Yeah, you can.
It's amazing what being able to see something spatially, especially in the physical realm as well, does for understanding. Well, thank you so much. It's great again getting a chance to talk with you and get some of your knowledge, man. So everyone obviously kind of dropped where people can find you, and I'm sure we'll be talking again soon.
Yeah, great. Anytime, please feel free to contact me and pass it around. If anybody has any questions about this, we don't want people to feel confused or lost on the standards. We want to make them friendly and be able to utilize them. We want you to be able to better serve your clients. That's the whole purpose. My clients are you. I don't have people that are paying me to build stuff. I have you that are paying me to help people better build stuff. So if anybody's confused, questions, anything, please reach out. Do not hesitate. We want to help.
You got it. Awesome. All right. Thanks again, Chuck.
All right. Thank you. Have a great one.
Talk to you later.
Bye-bye.